Welcome back to the Rundown Lab, where we break down and fact check the biggest videos and podcasts. We know your time is valuable, but when you can, we recommend catching the full video by Nick Norwitz. Links are in the description. Here's something that might surprise you. 37% of people with very low LDL cholesterol, the kind doctors typically celebrate, still show signs of atherosclerosis on imaging. That finding alone raises an important question. Is LDL cholesterol telling us the whole story? In this episode, Nick Norwitz explored the idea that relying solely on LDL cholesterol to assess cardiovascular risk is insufficient, and that markers like insulin resistance, triglycerides, inflammation, and body composition deserve far more attention than they typically get. It's a thought-provoking discussion, and much of it is grounded in real science. But some of the claims need a closer look. Let's start with what the episode gets right, because there's quite a bit here. The central premise, that LDL cholesterol alone doesn't capture the full picture of cardiovascular risk, is well supported. The study Norwitz references from the MESA and ELSA Brazil cohorts is real. It was published in the journal Atherosclerosis, and did find that 37% of untreated individuals with LDL below 70 milligrams per deciliter had subclinical atherosclerosis detected by coronary artery calcium scoring or carotid imaging. Importantly, these were people not taking any lipid-lowering medication, which was indeed part of the exclusion criteria, so we're looking at naturally low LDL levels. The discussion of statin side effects is also largely accurate. Statins are well documented to increase diabetes risk by roughly 9 to 12% in meta-analyses, with higher intensity regimens showing even greater risk. Research published in Cell Metabolism has shown that atorvastatin can reduce active GLP-1 levels by nearly 50%. Evidence also supports statin-related impacts on insulin sensitivity, mitochondrial function, and muscle health. These are real and documented effects. The biomarker recommendations are mostly solid too. The targets for HSCRP below 1 mg per liter, HbA1c below 5.5%, HDL above 50 for women and 40 for men, and the WHO standard waist-to-hip ratio thresholds are all well aligned with established guidelines. The point that normal HbA1c can mask underlying glycemic variability and hidden hyperinsulinemia is backed by research showing that over 30% of people with normal blood sugar markers still have elevated insulin levels. And the discussion of visceral fat's connection to insulin resistance, inflammation, cardiovascular disease, and even Alzheimer's risk is well supported by the literature. The MESA study on lipoprotein A and waist-to-hip ratio is also accurately cited, showing that a lower waist-to-hip ratio substantially modifies the cardiovascular risk associated with elevated Lp(a). Now, here's where things get more complicated. The claim that a metabolic score called LPIR, or lipoprotein insulin resistance, is, quote, 14-fold more powerful than LDL at predicting heart disease is a significant overstatement. The underlying study, published in JAMA Cardiology, did find that LPIR had the highest hazard ratio among roughly 50 biomarkers, but that 6.4 hazard ratio applied specifically to premature coronary heart disease in women under 55. In older women, the advantage narrowed considerably. And the 14-fold figure appears to come from a mathematical manipulation of hazard ratios that the study's own authors never used. Hazard ratios aren't designed to be divided against each other to produce fold differences in predictive power. It's fair to say LPIR was the strongest predictor in that specific subgroup, but framing it as 14 times more powerful than LDL is misleading. Some of the biomarker targets also go beyond what the evidence supports. The recommendation to aim for triglycerides below 80 milligrams per deciliter is presented as a personal opinion, which is fair, but no major medical organization has established that threshold. Standard guidelines recommend below 150, and the American Heart Association has suggested below 100 as optimal. Similarly, the fasting insulin target of below 7 is stricter than most clinical references, which generally flag levels above 8 to 10 as concerning. These aren't wrong per se, but listeners should understand they represent personal optimization philosophy rather than evidence-based clinical cutoffs. The suggestion to fast 12 to 16 hours before lipid testing is also more restrictive than necessary. Most guidelines recommend 8 to 12 hours, and current trends in lipidology actually support non-fasting panels for routine screening. Now for the more significant red flags. The claim that elevated triglycerides are linked to cardiovascular risk even more so than LDL contradicts the weight of evidence. Triglycerides are indeed an independent risk factor, but meta-regression analyses, including one published in Circulation, show that LDL cholesterol lowering has stronger effects on cardiovascular outcomes than triglyceride lowering. The American Heart Association has noted that triglycerides' independence as a causal factor remains debatable. Triglycerides may be a better marker of metabolic dysfunction overall, but as a direct driver of atherosclerosis, LDL has a much larger evidence base. The other concern is a structural one. The discussion of statin side effects, while factually accurate, is presented without adequate counterbalancing discussion of statins' well-proven cardiovascular benefits. For people with established cardiovascular disease or high risk, statins remain one of the most evidence-backed interventions available, and the diabetes risk, while real, is generally outweighed by cardiovascular protection in appropriate populations. Presenting the side effects without this context could lead some viewers to make harmful decisions about their medications. So here's the bottom line. This is a largely well-researched episode that makes an important and evidence-supported point. LDL cholesterol is not the only number that matters for heart health, and metabolic markers like insulin resistance, inflammation, triglycerides, and body composition provide valuable complementary information. Most of the specific study citations check out, and the biomarker discussion is genuinely useful. Where it falls short is in overstating the case against LDL through selective comparisons, presenting personal optimization targets as though they're established science, and discussing statin risks without adequately acknowledging statin benefits. The core message is valuable. Just make sure you're getting the full picture before making any changes to your health plan, and always discuss medication decisions with your healthcare provider. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you in the next one.